Welcome to Center Ground, your home for unfiltered discussion, where we tackle today's most talked about topics, break down current events, and give our take on the internet's latest foolishness. Tune in and let's find some common ground. Let's get this party started. Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Bootsy. Back again with another reaction video. I came across this video. I was just scrolling through and I stopped simply because it was Andrew Wilson. I've seen some of his debates. I don't agree with some of his antics at times or his opinions all the time, but I will say that I do enjoy watching him debate. I think he's really great at debates. Some would say he's a master debater. I know exactly what that sounds like, so I'm not going to say it. But yeah, some would say he's really good at debating people. And he tends to hit them with facts and figures, which I like. I don't like listening to people's opinions or hearing their feelings because it's not rooted in anything. Anyone can hear or feel anything. So let's get this started.
So yeah, it would be very demoralizing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's probably not a good idea to have women on the frontline combat because of that reason, right?
I mean, I guess that's just kind of assuming that is like essentially what's always going to happen.
Andrew Wilson destroys this insane Marxist feminist in this debate over whether or not women should go to war in this clip from the Whatever podcast, as Andrew Wilson totally dismantles this woman using some very basic logic to show why this is such a terrible idea and how it all would play out. Let's get in.
Okay, so that just gave us a little bit of context into what we're talking about. I can understand the need to want to defend and, fight for your country. I do not understand why so many women want to just be in roles simply because men have them. That's not something I'll ever understand, truly, right? Some jobs, it's like, why do you even want that job? But they want what they want and you can't stop them. But yeah, I don't think women should be on the front line personally. When I've done the research on it, they tend to be more prone to injury, which puts their fellow army men, army women at risk, which is very dangerous, especially when you're on the front line. And also, they also tend to be, the victims of certain behaviors by destructive, brutal men. So it's like, why would you put yourself in between or even in these situations? But again, some people want to defend their country. I think that's honorable, and I understand that. However, I just don't understand the other part of the other side of it.
Well, for why it is that if men are fighting the wars, they're necessarily in a position of privilege where they can make the determination.
I mean, I don't like.
Fighting war is not a privilege, by the way. Not having to fight it is a privilege. For anyone who has never been to war, understand that you are a very privileged individual. I've seen men who came back from war and they never come back quite the same. Their brains, something happens to them because sometimes you have to do things that you should never have to do. So I don't know why people believe that it's a privilege to go to war. That's madness. It's like saying, hey, it's a privilege to kill people. Like, come on now.
Women can fight against alongside men. I don't think this is.
They can't. They literally cannot fight alongside men.
They have, like in the Civil War, women were sneaking in to the military.
Women
Yes,
were not fighting.
They were.
Would you like to get a death count on how many women died in combat in the Civil War versus men?
Well, they weren't allowed to enlist in the Civil War.
They're allowed right now.
So they snuck in.
They're allowed right now.
And they fought on.
That's an interesting take. So when I looked, I went to Virginia recently, right? And I learned that women were involved in military, but not in the way that you would think, not in combat. So they did a lot of they provided the meals and the comfort and the, medical for the soldiers. And it's interesting because we live in a society that tells people they can do whatever they want and they can do everything, which is a lie. But it's funny to me because the women back then did not seem to mind helping out their fellow countrymen by helping them where they needed help. Right? They didn't feel like they needed to usurp the men and fight the wars. They didn't feel like they needed to be alongside the men and fight the war. And quite frankly, I know some people don't believe in the Bible, but they were more like a helpmate, even to military personnel. Sometimes I think it's more ego than anything. They want to feel that they can accomplish what men can do. And because they are so keen on feeling this way, they tend to ignore the other aspects of reality. Something tells me that Angela's going to talk about the injuries that they face and the liabilities that they create by being on the battlefield. It's like, imagine having to fight alongside your own children. You're never going to be fully aware of the enemy because you're going to be too concerned about what's behind you or what's next to you.
Next to their husbands.
Would you like a list of how many women right now are in combat infantry capable of going to the front lines in comparison to men? Do you want to know how many that is?
Sure.
Okay, well, let's start with this. Special Forces. How many female Navy SEALs do you think there are?
None.
How many?
None.
That's really weird. Are they barred from being Navy SEAls?
No.
Oh, and they are trying to become Navy SEAls.
I think there have been women who.
A lot of them.
How many Navy SEAls are there?
I don't know, but how many? Let's say
I think it's important delineation to make too, because I'm sure you would argue a majority of men don't meet that requirement.
Sure.
So how many men are meeting that requirement? Again, it's saying,
but all the ones who are men.
Again, it's saying the fence is 6 feet tall. You have to be able to see over the fence, and
So you want them to lower the standard of physical strength for Navy SEAls?
Well, again, like if we're talking about the certain.
And see, this is what I was talking about, ego. So quick story. I remember I worked with a woman. I don't know if I told this story before, but I worked with a woman. I'll make it quick. I worked with a woman in a mailroom before. And of course, the mailroom was full of guys, right? There was 2 women. One was in management. One was one of the lay workers. And guess who the liability was when it became time to actually do the job and do the heavy lifting? It was the one lady that worked with us. And it's funny because if you heard her speak, you would swear she was the hardest working person at the job. And she did the smallest amount of work. And her complaint was, well, I'm a woman. So it's like, okay, so you want the equal pay that everybody else is getting, but you don't want to contribute the equal work. And I get what Andrew is getting at. The Navy SEALs, it requires rigorous training. And what she tried to do is have a got you moment where she was like, well, men don't make that requirement either, which is true, which is why most men would never go for Navy SEALs training. But you have an abundance of women who have egos. Then they're on an ego trip and they try to do what the men do just because they want to be able to say, I can do what men can do. And then when they fail, instead of acknowledging that, yeah, you might not be good enough for this particular thing, but you can be great in other things. No, instead, they would rather lower the standard. And that's why he mentioned lowering the fence.
Systems that are in place, I don't think there are countries that exist without Navy SEAls. There are countries that exist without.
What country exists without special forces? There's no country that exists without special forces, not one.
Not to the degree that we have here. I mean, are you saying all countries have a Navy, a military, and an Air Force?
There's no country I'm aware of that doesn't have a military. None.
Well, again, I delineated between Air Force.
That's just branches
Navy.
of military.
Right.
Yeah, so what? No, I think if you live in the middle of the desert, you don't have a Navy.
But obviously...
yeah, if you live in the desert, you don't have a Navy.
Sure.
But then you still have a military. That's the point.
Sure, but again, to what degree do you, how large does this need to be? I don't think it...
See, she's just talking at this point. She doesn't really have a point. And again, it seems to be falling right back to ego. Sometimes people, when they're, especially in debates, they can't admit that they're wrong. And this is why it's useless to argue with people who can't admit that they're wrong, because they'll just keep talking and then they'll shift the goalposts and they'll start making up stuff. And then when they start losing, they'll cry and then they'll accuse you of something. It's just a waste of time. Unless you plan on making fun of them or you're using it for content or something like that. If it's entertaining, then I get why people do it. But if you're actually trying to change the heart and mind of these people, you're usually wasting your time.
Necessarily needs to be always a necessary condition of a society.
Yeah, it does need to be a necessary condition of a society, because you have to have force in order to run a society. You have to. There's no way around it. But back to this, you kind of obfuscated, almost got away with it, but how many females Navy SEAls are there? There's 0. Mm-hmm. They're not barred from doing it.
Right.
So what's the barrier for them?
I mean, obviously physical capacity.
Yeah, they can't meet the physical capacity.
Right.
And so the thing is, hang on,
that too.
We can break this down going beyond that, beyond the Navy SEALs. You just start with the special forces. Let's move over into other types of special forces. How many female Green Berets?
Oh, I have no idea.
How many do you think?
I don't know.
Okay, well, Green Beret Special Forces, I don't think there's any of those either. Okay. But if you get into combat infantry, right? Women who are capable of being in combat in the infantry, would you say that is on par with men or less than?
Probably less than.
Significantly less?
Yeah. I don't think women are steered towards armed forces.
And see, this is what I'm talking about. So she knows that the answer is significantly less. I think anyone with common sense and knowledge know the answer is significantly less. But she uses terms like probably. right? It's not probably significantly less. The answer is significantly less, and you know the reasoning. But again, ego tends to get in the way.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Let's pretend for a second that you were a general. And you should be able to think like a general, right? Because women aren't incapable of that or anything. So the enemy, right? The enemy really likes to grape women. Like that, they really like that, right? And you have men and women who can fight in the front lines, right? So you draft men and you draft women. Do you think that the enemy would try to demoralize you by raping your women?
Yes.
Yeah. Would it work?
Demoralize women?
No, to demoralize men and women. Wouldn't it demoralize the men if the enemy was raping female soldiers and they could like hear them?
I think that would demoralize anyone, sure.
Yeah, but it would really demoralize the men, right?
Yeah, and see, that's what I was getting at before, because naturally, we as men don't like hearing women cry, right? It's literally a physiological or a biological response that we have where if we find a woman crying, if we can hear it, if we can see it, it literally softens us. And so that's why you should not have a lot of female combat soldiers, because yes, like he said, the first rule of combat, if you can break someone psychologically, you can win a war. And that's exactly what they would do. They would try to take the women and they would try to harm them. And then they would probably leave remnants of those women for the other soldiers to see, because psychologically that would destroy them. You don't even have to like those women and it would still destroy you mentally. Because at the end of the day, as much as men like to argue back and forth with women or tell them that they're delusional or tell them that they're never going to get what they crave, their desire, all this other nonsense, at the root of it all, men still care about women. That's why men will give advice to women, even if women think that those men shouldn't exist.
One of the most deranged parts of feminism is its obsession with trying to make everything equal to the point that they want to be equal even in the military, where none of them want to go. There's no woman who's running, hey, let me run to the front lines of a war and fight. No, they don't even try to do that.
And that's exactly what I was saying earlier, right? Their ego forces them to want to do everything that men do, which I find hilarious because they always want to do stuff that men don't even want to do. You think men want to work 90 hours? You think men want to not see their children's first step, not be around their children, not watch them grow? I've spoken to a bunch of men who had success financially, and they all say the same thing. They wish they can get those years back. And when you try to take those lessons and gear them towards women and say, hey, perhaps you should not focus on that career, because that career is always going to be there, but your children won't always be small. They will call you misogynistic. They will say that you hate them. They will say something as crazy as you hate your mother, just because you're trying to protect them from an idea or from something that they haven't fully thought through. And men collectively have gotten tired. So they said, you know what? Go for it. And that's why now when women complain about these things, you literally have men who laugh, or you have men who just don't listen or who don't care. Because at what point do you just give up?
Yet they still try to make an argument for letting women in. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And the consequences are completely different. Like carrying 80 to 100 pounds on you all day on a woman's frame versus a man's is completely different. The differences are so obvious.
Man, listen, I agree with this man. And I'm telling you, I walk around with about 30 pounds on my back just for exercising purposes, right? And I walk a few miles. Sometimes I walk 3 miles. Sometimes I walk 5, sometimes 7. When I tell you it is grueling, that's 30 pounds. 100 pounds is a whole human being. We can get into bone density and muscle and all this other crap, right? But it's not something that's typically ideal for women. Yet, if the military does not allow them to put themselves through that much pain and struggle, they will call the military sexist. And it's like, okay, so do you actually want to do this stuff? They'll go, no. There's no winning with some people.
The fact that we're even having the conversation is insane. But yet this woman doesn't really know any facts, and she does not have a mindset of what it really takes to actually be in a war. And every woman who's going to be out there in the field, yeah, if that happens, if they get captured, look, the women who go through basic, who go through basic, I know this from every soldier I've ever known that's gone in, says all them girls getting ran through. All of them are getting ran through. So if you take guys who aren't even allies, who aren't even friendly, who are enemies in the middle of a war, what do you think is going to happen? But folks, hit that like button if you're enjoying the video. I appreciate it, and let's get back in.
What's
Because they can't do anything to stop it.
okay?
And they want to stop it, right?
I would think anyone would want to stop rape.
Yeah, sure. But when you're talking about your fighting force, right? Do you think that the enemy is going to grape the men?
I mean, if there's no women, sure.
They don't.
And that's what happens in prison.
Yeah, sure. It happens in prison, not usually in infantry combat.
Well, I mean, because there's no, like, we're just giving an example, like when there's no women, men grape men.
Yeah, but that's, first of all, that does happen.
That was a wild example, by the way. Just, that was wild.
But in prison, it's not common. But let me ask you this. Would it be more common in
I think it's
prisons?
pretty
Would it be more common in prison for there to be rape if they were co-ed?
See, and this is what I'm talking about. I hate having conversations with people like this because they know the answer, but they're trying to find a way out. And so they try to delay it as much as possible.
I mean, rape happens a lot in prison, being sex segregated.
Yeah. Would it happen more if it wasn't sex segregated? Like if there was a lot of women around very violent inmates, do you think that they would get grape? There would be more grape or less grape?
I think the women, they would grape women.
There would be a lot more grape, right? I mean, there's opportunity, they're smaller, easier to do.
Sure.
Yeah,
But
that same
I
thing's
don't
going to
think
happen in combat.
rape is necessarily like just an act of physical strength.
Yeah, maybe not. There needs to be motivation. Like, I'm commanding you to grape the enemy because it demoralizes them.
Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, don't you think that that takes away from the effectiveness of women in combat in general?
I mean, not necessarily.
What?
So you're saying because women are present and there's an opportunity for the,
No, in combat, they're present.
right, women are present.
You agree
in
that people get
combat.
captured in combat all the time?
Right. So let's just, I'm sorry. Let me just understand this hypothetical here. So there's hypothetical 1 where the entire infantry is men.
Yeah.
And there's hypothetical 2 where
it's mixed.
It's mixed. And there are different outcomes.
Yes. Very different outcomes.
Why?
Yes, because if you have an infantry full of men and the enemy captures them, they would probably end most of them and keep a few, as bargaining chips. As opposed to if you had a mixed bag of, mixed infantry of men and women, and they were all captured, they probably would end all the men and then destroy the women, and then probably end the women. That's how some people are. It's terrible, but this world can be very terrible. And war, even though most people don't realize it, war is not a positive. It is horrible. I don't know why people love promoting war, but that's usually because they've never fought in it and they don't know anyone who has ever fought in it.
Are the ones with men having a different?
Because they're not getting raped by the enemy. They're getting captured by the enemy, but they're not
Wouldn't
getting
that
raped.
be demoralizing?
Not as demoralizing as sending your own soldiers back pregnant with the enemy's enemy or enemy's baby inside of their womb. That seems way more demoralizing to me.
Okay.
Doesn't that seem way more demoralizing to you?
I'm not gonna lie, that's some devious stuff. I didn't even think about that. That's wild. Because imagine they just, ended all the men and then impregnated all the women. It's like, yo, you're destroying the mentality of the other soldiers. You're destroying the women that you did it to, and then you're harming the child's future that you probably will never meet. Yo, that's diabolical.
I mean, definitely.
For one thing, finding
more horrific,
soldiers
yeah.
who would just have gay sodomizing sex with men would not be easy to do. But finding soldiers who would be willing to rape the enemy's women doesn't seem like that would be very difficult to find.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it would be very demoralizing.
That's the other thing when they know they get caught. They don't answer properly. They don't say yes. They say sure. So they use probably and sure a lot.
I think, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's probably not a good idea to have women on the front line combat because of that reason, right?
I mean, I guess that's just kind of assuming that is like essentially what's always going to happen.
Folks, put in the comments how insane you think this woman is. She will even acknowledge physical differences between men and women, but when she says, oh, well, there's a group of all men and a group of mixed, I don't see why there's a different outcome. Across the board, there should be different outcomes in every single regard, and yet this crazy effing woman is going to sit here and act like she's an intelligent person and not be able to come to a conclusion that you're going to get a different
Man, he was stuttering like me, boy. Spit it out.
outcomes. I don't get it. It's just absolutely baffling. And think about this. If society already has such a problem, like guys have such a problem, not in a bad way, but basically don't want to deal with no baby mamas, any of that. I don't want to deal with all your drama. What man is going to want to pick up a woman who fostered an enemy's child in combat and make that into a family? What man is going to want to do that? I mean, there might be some hardcore simps who are willing to do that, but the other 99% of guys are not. So now you put this woman on the front lines. She got...
Yeah, I'll say this. You should never underestimate how pathetic some of these guys are. They've been taking it to the next level every chance they get.
Raped. Now she comes back. No one will take her. You have doomed this woman for the rest of her life to just carry out caring for the child of not only her rapist, but the enemy combatant who attacked your country. Like, this is the world that feminism wants to create? For what? But what does this gain society in any way? These are all terrible, terrible outcomes, and they claim all of it's okay because we're trying to be moral and fair. It's absolutely insane, folks. But thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you thought about what Andrew Wilson had to say, destroying this insane feminist in this clip. Take care, like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.
I'll close it here and say this, right? I don't understand the desire of women to constantly feel the need to be like men. I am a firm believer in roles. I am a firm believer in specific gender roles. Does that mean that you can't contribute if you're not a specific gender? Absolutely not. But I do believe that if your life is created and tailored a certain way, then yes, certain things require genders, and they require gender for a reason. The reason why I believe women tend to take care of children is not because men are incapable. It's not that because men don't want to. It's just because women almost holistically are better at nurturing children, right? Don't get me wrong. I think men are better at constructing those children and making them better human beings because we tend to think further out. Women tend to think based on how the kid feels. I think that's why. What's crazy is I don't think people realize this, but as more fathers have left the home, obesity in children has risen. Why do you think that is? That's because mommy likes when baby is happy. Daddy be like, get to the gym, Pudgy. You're not going to eat that ice cream. You see how there's differences between women and men. I do think that there are roles in the world that should be held by women more so than men, right? I think nurses can be better as women. Why? Because women tend to be nurturing. And if I'm sick, I don't want no mean man telling me, you'll be all right. Now, I don't want that. I want that, all right, sugar, everything's going to be all right, baby. You get what I'm saying? Now, as opposed to the other side of things, I think men tend to do more of the violent jobs, more of the grueling jobs. And it's funny how we live in a society where we're all equal until it's time to be equal. And I think that's the part that Andrew was getting at, where when it takes the extreme violence, you don't have women in those jobs, in the army, in the military. But when you have certain generals and certain, other positions within the military, we have the first woman here and the first woman there. They don't speak about how those same women tend to not have the respect of the soldiers because they took shortcuts to getting there. Right? So it's a problem within this modern society. We keep trying to make a square go in a circle hole, and then we get mad that it doesn't fit. And it seems like we're not done yet. Although it seems like we're starting to get over the hill of the insanity, where people are starting to push back and fight back a little bit more than they used to. Some would say it's because of the brashness of the current president, but who knows, right? I think people are just getting tired, and because jobs cannot now, harm you simply because you have an opposing opinion, because an opposing style opinion is currently in leadership. I think that's really what's pushing everyone to start to speak out. I don't believe that most people believe this nonsense when they were saying it, but they felt like they couldn't say anything in opposition because they don't want to lose their livelihood. But let me know what you thought about it. Like and subscribe, write a comment, let me know. Let's start a conversation about what you feel, what you think. And, we'll keep this ball rolling until we meet again. Thanks for listening to the Center Ground Podcast. We'll be back soon with some more great content. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on the video. We are a new channel, and growth is essentially our main objective. So send us an email at centerground.pod@gmail.com with any ideas or clips you would like for us to review. This was definitely fun, and I'd say let's do it again. But before you go, always remember, greatness lives somewhere within you. Just make sure you're taking the time to find the key to unlock that greatness. Until we meet again, I'll see you soon.